Are you ready to get provoked? You're listening to Can I Live, a show created to excite, ignite, and expose. Let's tune in with your host, R.W. Jones.
Yes. Free all my sons. Hey, Kim, how you doing?
Hi, Raquel. Good
Hey.
morning.
Oh, I miss you so much.
Likewise, my dearest sister. I am here, though.
Amen. This is Can I Live's first podcast, and Can I Live is sending out an SOS all the way down to North Carolina because today we are talking about disrupting the patterns. Disruption, because that's where we are right now. We got statues, people just throwing statues, just turning over statues, throwing them in the rivers and the canals. I mean, it's mere disruption out there, good disruption at that. And we just do that, people call us fire starters, good fire starters, or troublemakers, good troublemakers, because we disrupt the patterns. We disrupt sometimes the way you think. We work to disrupt the way, people practice certain type of institutionalized policies that you can't necessarily see on the outside, but feel as you're matriculating through those systems. So I'm really excited to have Kimberly here, Dr. McTarian from SOS, Save Our Sons, out in North Carolina. And if we could just talk about really quickly, what is one pattern that needs to be disrupted like right now today? Because I see the young people and they're out there protesting and they're out there saying enough is enough. And I'm not sure they know specifically, we know it been enough. And one of the things I must say before we even move forward is I repented. And I repent for the part that I played in being complicit in allowing the systems to continue to do what it is doing without being so filled with righteous indignation a long time ago and going over and turning them damn statues over myself. I probably was scared to get arrested or whatever. Absolutely. But I thank God that this younger generation is just like, some people might call them lawless. Some people might call them fearless. I call them just fed up, and I'm so grateful for them. And so, if we had to kind of just talk about, what you're seeing out there, where are we going, and what patterns do we have to continue to disrupt in order to see the change that we know. And I don't know if we really know what should be versus what we know, what we don't want. I don't know if we really know what we want. What do you think?
Well, I think you said well when you talk about disrupting the patterns. And I think patterns are set by repetition. And I think what happens is that we have a government that offers its hand to support or protect its citizens. But what we find in the end is this magic trick that shows that they're not really helping, but they're perpetuating the damage. So why did it take young people to be lawless, to remove statues that represent slavery, represent tyranny, represent the overthrow of humanity, the Native Americans? Why do you have to have a law to even be placed in legislation to remove it? So again, maybe the laws are for the lawless. And actually, they've created laws that protect their institutional racism. I think that's basically what we're looking at. And we didn't want to really face it. But again, we have a generation of young people who are not brainwashed.
That's right.
And I think that's the premise for what we're dealing with, is that we are no longer allowing this. And, I was saying the other day how Christianity have played this role of passivity, where America
just pray on it, Jesus gonna fix it, just go say, which is a real thing. I mean, you can't say that that's not a real thing in the faith. Like, when you've done all, I think that's the part they miss. When you have done all, then stand. I don't think a lot of us have done all.
Right. Well, I think we use Christianity as a crutch, and really, Christianity is more used for fear, more so than truth. And so, if we believed in Christianity If Jesus flipped over the table, then why haven't the Christians pulled down the statues?
Mm. I mean,
Because Jesus would have came against injustice.
that's right. That I know for sure.
Absolutely. So, go ahead.
So what do you see when you see the youth today? When we say disrupting the pattern, give me a pattern that you feel needs to be disrupted, like right now, that maybe one is not disrupting.
Delay. I think these tactics are what I would call delay patterns. For instance, marijuana. Certain states have accepted that marijuana should be legal. Certain states have not. Of course, we all know that marijuana doesn't do the damage that everyone is saying it does, no more than cigarettes do, or any other drug does. But
So
they choose to keep it illegal because that's their way of capturing our men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So once we look at the practices that don't make common sense, it came from the ground. If you left it alone, it will continue to grow and spread. And so there's nothing in it that's deadly. So why are you continuing to criminalize the plant so that you can continue to criminalize the population?
That's definitely a pattern. But it's still, to me, it's the, what do you call, like you always say, it's not the root cause, it's a symptom. Yeah, they'll arrest you for, hell, they killing you for nothing nowadays, or killing us for nothing nowadays. But if we talk about arrest, let's talk about that, because I have a pattern that I want to disrupt. And I think if our young people are out there, and I hope and pray that they're listening, I think I always was taught to follow the money. And I think that, we talk conflicts of interest, these agencies who have these conflicts of interest laws that they don't even abide by on their own. And so, for example, when the federal government, the feds, give states certain type of monies to subsidize payroll for the police department, every town and city police department is not 100% solely funded on that city's tax base or service base. A city gets its money through taxes and revenues, fees and services. And so typically what will happen is a place like City of Raleigh would apply for some federal grant monies, and the feds will give them monies with these contingencies that, certain amounts of arrests need to be made. And so I remember being in Raleigh, a decade, not too long ago, but for a decade. And I remember, questioning why the cops had to patrol certain areas and why wasn't the patrol men evenly distributed across the city. Although they would say so, but they were meticulous about patrolling certain communities because they knew it was easy to get the number. And so let's talk about how, and I would love to get that research on, that's the research you probably need to get from the City of Raleigh. Find out how much of their, their police budget, what happened to you, Kim? Find out how much of their police budget is actually paid for through Raleigh city taxes and revenue, and how much of their city budget is paid for through federal grants. Because I think that that's where you start to disrupt the pattern, because I think it's a conflict of interest. You have the feds giving the city the money, but with the understanding that you will send people our way, send them to federal prison, send them to county jail. And so, and it really, county jail is only for misdemeanors or minor offenses that's under a year. So anybody doing more than a year has to go to the federal prisons, because aren't prisons federally owned? Some are privately owned, but federally owned.
So the majority of the prisons in the United States are the federal prisons are owned by the federal government. Very few are privatized, but it is a growing movement. Even some of the state detention centers are now being privatized. As far as, for instance, the ones that are in Georgia that are immigration detention centers, those are county jails, but they're owned privately. And even though they cooperate with ICE, it's almost like a partnership between them, between the agencies. Whether they're private or not, they all need beds to fill. So they make sure they stay in close connection as affiliates so that they can funnel the money through.
So when they say police reform, what are we really talking about? How do you, is it, are we really talking police reform, or are you talking federal prison policy reform? Like, can you address police reform without addressing the federal government?
Well, I think it's a combination of all. I think you can't fight any battle in this manner going in with one fist. I think you have to come at various angles because they've used various angles to attack us. For instance, they've used the criminalization of marijuana. They've used the criminalization of certain drugs, crack versus opiates, how they handle it. You know, what population is going to be vulnerable to it. So you stifle or you, I remember looking at the art of war, and one of the ways that you disenfranchise or you break down your enemy is you cut off supply. You cut off the supply of employment. You cut off the supply of resources. And what I really want to make people, Americans, understand is that though we're in America, one of the hugest things that we really have to be careful about is marketing propaganda. During the Nuremberg trials, though there was a minister of propaganda basically who was tried, the United States and its allies tried the Nuremberg trials, the minister of propaganda, because they used propaganda every day to brainwash the people of Germany. That's how you got everybody involved to believe in a certain way that Jews should be killed. And there is no less fascism or these tactics that are used in America. After a while, you begin to believe that these people are demons or these people are criminals. You use the media. You use. I mean, and then we create a self fulfilling prophecy when we begin to call ourselves savage, or we start calling ourselves, I'm the villain. You know, all of our rap songs start saying, yes, we'll kill you. We're this, we're that. You know, we start we start buying into the language, into the lifestyle, because what they do is they'll give money to a couple of guys, and glamorize it. And before you know it, you got hordes of young people moving towards. And so for white children, it may be entertainment, but for us, we're trying to actually bring street credibility so that we can authenticate this lifestyle that has been perpetuated in our communities.
Mm-hmm. You just said something right there that I want to make sure we drive home and not make people forget. One pattern, another pattern we can disrupt is in the media, the music business. How come all Black rappers are paid to just totally, what's the word? Not humiliate, just disrespect Black women? Why do the Black songs, the Black rappers, why do they have to rap about drugs and sex and the things that just tear our community up? But you don't see no white rapper really out there
Right.
just disrespecting women to that degree. You don't see no country artists out there doing it. You won't see no blues. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just so perplexed at the fact that here we have this genre that absolutely is perpetuating these stereotypes, creating, like you said, these lifestyles. That's a pattern we need to interrupt. Whoever is at the top of these music labels that's saying that we will only give you a label if you talk about this, that, and the third. That's the devil right there. And we sign on to it. So we become just as complicit in the process.
Absolutely.
And I give shout out to people like Chance and Kendrick, who really kind of do their own independent thing. Like, you want to disrupt the pattern, you want to be a rapper, go independent. No longer sell your souls and your lives over to the music industry. Have your voice be authentically yours to say what it is you need. I think technology has leveled the playing field for support, along that lines. But you said something just powerful. It just kind of.
Right, because the music the message is in the music, and if you continue to use the music to push your message, then after a while, people begin to hear that. We
Absolutely.
begin to perpetuate that in our culture and our everyday living.
Absolutely.
And then,
Without a doubt.
once it becomes acceptable, then we now created a profile for ourselves. We've become our own target base. So through self-destruction, and what sick society
See?
would allow this to become our social norm?
Hey.
So again, we have to come after those industries that, first of all, for our legislation to interrupt our advancement, because life is supposed to advance. And I shouldn't have to shoot, kill, or override your life just so I can get ahead. That's not what's happening in the Mexican community, the Hispanic community. They don't have to shoot everybody to get ahead. They don't need a rap song to declare I shot everybody. So then why are we subjected to that mindset? And we have to call that out.
So let me ask you this.
Our government who first, we should have been the most protected race. We should have been protected first.
Says who?
The government that harmed us, the government that disparaged us. You have a duty. If you say serve and protect, and for 400 years, you've disenfranchised, you've manipulated, you've cooked the books, you cooked the books, you burned the books, you removed books and education, you've replaced it with your education, you've defrauded, and then you still say we serve and protect. We have to stop that language and say, excuse me, what are you serving and who are you protecting? Because it's certainly not us. And if we're going to be the educators, then we have to say, this is how we need to be protected. And then they'll say, well, all lives matter. No, Black lives matter.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
All other races have always mattered. Then they shame us for saying it. They shame us, but they're not ashamed to put their statues up.
So let me ask you this question, because this is, it's conversation. So if people say all lives matter, when people say that, which is true, it's not a fact that we're negating, but what we're saying here, Black lives matter. Okay, but what do people say how do you respond to people that say, well, if Black lives matter, how come they don't matter when we in the street shooting our own stuffs, when we in the community, selling crack to our own community, killing our own people? Why Black lives don't matter then? Or is it because we believe the propaganda? Is that what it is?
Absolutely. And let me just say this. When it comes to, let's go back to the form of education. Let's talk about, as an educator, I understand that the rules and regulations were made only to fit their definition of their lifestyle, not ours. So when you talk about violence, for instance, I had this discussion with other protesters about peace for protest, and I've heard so many Black people at this time say, we're having a peaceful protest. They have to notify white America first that, hi, we're going to be peaceful. They never said, we're coming out here to protest this issue. They have to notify white America, because they're not notifying Black America that they need to be peaceful.
True.
So
I don't feel notified when that happens.
Right, exactly. So again, we have to talk about terminology, definition, and who is it directed to and for. So when you say all lives matter, we have to say, well, if they matter, then we shouldn't have to have our black box. We shouldn't even have to have affirmative action. We shouldn't have to have EEOC if we all matter. We shouldn't have to have a felony or a misdemeanor box.
I mean, I agree.
So then,
I don't know if people are willing to, while we're out here protesting and doing all of this wonderful stuff. I love for the statues just falling. Nancy Pelosi, she done took the stuff down in the Capitol building. I'm like, oh, Nancy, that's a big boss move that you just did. Yay. But I will tell you this, I don't know if we're really ready to live a lifestyle free from the things we contribute to make the shit. Oh, sorry. I promised I was gonna stop cursing. I'm trying. But I don't know if we're ready. Like, are rappers ready to not sign the deal? Are they ready to continue to be broke? Are they ready to for self-preservation, the long game, for community preservation, for I am my brother's keeper? Are you ready to not sign that deal and not say those explicit lyrics? Are we ready to, denounce certain type of affiliations and memberships? I'm just saying.
Well, let me just say this. In darkness comes light, and darkness is in law. You always start at law. And who's protecting the law? Because laws have to be protected. So we'll never start with the rappers. The rappers just sing the song of the culture. They're like the gospel. They sing a gospel song. They speak the truth. Now we may not like it, but they speak a truth. They talk about the drugs. They talk about promiscuity. Why? They're not getting married. You have two different households. You have some, they're talking about the music is conducive to the lifestyle, and the lifestyles are all puppeteered by legislation. So
Okay.
let's go to the root. The root is not the song. The song would change when the legislation changed.
Well, what legislation says what? Freedom of speech says that you have to do that? What legislation out there says?
Well, see, here's the thing. You're puppeted by your government. If your government rapes you, that's what you talk about. So when your government rapes you, it comes out in the music. If God is good to me, I sing God is good to me. If I lost my job, I sing the blues. If I lost my husband, I sing the blues. If I get a new job, I sing about God's greatness. If your government rapes you, robs you, puts you in housing, and gives you drugs, then all of my songs is going to talk about crack. It's going to talk about, your mother, your dad, where he was. J. Cole talks about his mother's house being foreclosed on. So let's talk about that's the gospel. Hi, J. Cole, and we will talk with you later. So they're speaking the gospel. Once we come at the legislation and strip it of its rights to defraud its people, we will hear liberty songs.
All right. Well, I know one thing. We're trying to keep these little podcasts short, sweet, to the point, giving you some food for thought. I am going to, I think on that note, we'll probably start a new episode, but at this point, I think we should just exit on that note, come back, kind of take a little break, come back, because that was good. That was good.